Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Adam Lody, Principal Dentist at Teeth for Life. Welcome to the show, and Adam, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Mike. Yeah, great. I am good, but I'm very, very warm because we seem to have chosen the hottest day of the year to do our podcast.
Yeah. Have you got a fan in your room?
Not this one, no. So you'll probably see me getting increasingly
To be
warm as the
fair,
podcast goes
to
on.
be fair, just let me know before you pass out so we can stop the recording.
Before you
Have you
hear
got
the
some
thud.
water? Yeah, the thud. Obviously, if people are watching this on YouTube, they'll see it. I actually have a fan in here. I've turned it off to make sure that I don't hear the propeller noise. So if we both pass out, then well, so be it. Anyway, great. Hey man, it's great to have you on. I'd love to share this story with the listeners. You are a listener of the podcast, and we bumped into each other at one of the events earlier this year, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the conference events, the trade shows.
Yes, we were at one of the trade shows in London, and you heard my voice, and you came up to me and said, "Are you Mike?" And I was like, "I don't know who this guy is."
Yeah, I was proper fanboy then. Sorry.
But it's just again, like it's that, like we've been doing this podcast so long, and I get the odd reaction here, but like to have someone, recognize your voice, and then come over and say hello is just like mind blowing to me. But obviously, we had a great chat, and obviously, one of the first things I had was like, "Let's get you in the podcast." And I was really hoping, like, oh no, it's not going to be a situation where don't meet your heroes sort of thing. But hopefully, I've lived up to expectations so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Adam, we just explained how we met. I am obviously going to dig deeper into your backstory, how you became a dentist, obviously more importantly how you became a practice owner. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great.
Fantastic. So before we dig into let's be frank, very unusual circumstances surrounding your practice ownership, and we'll cover that in a second. Just tell me a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? And obviously, more importantly, why did you become a dentist?
So I grew up in South Wales, in a town called Caerphilly, which is close to Cardiff, just over the mountain or large hill from Cardiff. Born in the Miners Hospital there, which is now no longer a hospital; it's a community centre, I think. And I mean, when I was born with a cleft lip and palate. So my early years were a lot of in and out of hospital, having operations to correct that. And I think because of that, I was also one of those children who when I was a child, who liked to ask lots of questions, probably quite annoying in some ways. But because of that, it fostered something in me that made me very interested in dentistry, medicine, clinical side of things, really. The more I asked, I think the more interested that I got in it. And I'm the type of person who likes to help people anyway. So I think that path then led me towards dentistry in the end. Then.
Oh, fantastic! So it was more obviously your personal experience of dentistry. There weren't any dentists in the family, like a lot of the stories we hear. No, so totally new. You're the first dentist in the family.
Yeah, I'm the first dentist in the family. Yeah. So no history of. There've been nurses in the family, but no doctors or dentists previously. So.
Fantastic, awesome, love that. And where did you go to dental school, Adam?
I wasn't very adventurous back when I was 18 years old. But it's different now. But I went to dental school in Cardiff, which is a good 7 or 8 miles away from where I grew up.
Honestly, man, sometimes actually, like, that's the best decision for you at the time. Like, it's that whole, like, And obviously you wouldn't change it for anything right now. So that's awesome. So how long so you graduated, and then how long were you an associate for?
So I graduated and I did foundation training, or vocational training as it was called, back in those days. I did that in the same practice I'm in now. And then I was an associate here for 10 years after that.
Fantastic.
So
And so
yeah, I did
before, so you did, so it was, is it 10 years, and then how long is vocational training or foundational? Was it
1
a
year.
year or 2? 1 year,
Yeah, 1
perfect.
year. Yeah.
So prior to owning your practice, you did 11 years. And then before we reveal exactly kind of why you ended up buying the practice, had you thought up until that point, had you thought about going into practice ownership? Was that something that had played on your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I thought of, but probably not in the way that it eventually happened.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely something, especially as I got a bit older, you know,
Hmm.
that you sort of start. I mean, I think maybe when you're in your early 20s and your early years, it's not something that crosses your mind so much, or at least it didn't for me. But I
Yeah,
think as you get older, it does cross your mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, just to set the scene. So, you've done your vocational training. You're associate for 10 years. You're kind of thinking about ownership, but it's not something that's like seriously on your mind. Why reveal to us exactly, why did you then buy your first, and not just your first practice, your second practice, because it came as a bundle? Like, what were the circumstances around that, and like kind of what made you change your mind in that moment? Because it's a bit of an unusual situation.
It is, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't have chosen. Well, I definitely wouldn't have chosen the circumstances that it happened in. But the principal of the practice at the time, whilst I was an associate, who was also had been my vocational trainer. He suddenly got very ill at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, and he discovered that he discovered he had cancer, and within about a month of finding out that he had cancer, he passed away. So that all happened quite quickly for him and for all the rest of the practice. But in the interim period where he'd not long found out, he called me to a meeting over at his house, and when I went over there, then I sort of had an inkling of what he might say, but that's when he said, "I'd like you to buy the practice if you'd like to, because we got on really well, and I think he wanted the continuity." He didn't say to me at the time what his prognosis was, and I still to this day I don't know what he knew and what he didn't at that point. But yeah, that's when he asked me. So I did have a short period to think, but it didn't take too long to say yes.
Yeah. So he sat you down, and obviously you were aware that things were happening in the background. You weren't really sure how serious it was, and he kind of said, "Look, I need to kind of I need to sell the practice. Need to kind of get my affairs in order." How, as you mentioned, you thought about it in the past, but you weren't necessarily thinking about it in that moment. So how were what were you thinking at the time? Like, or if you can remember what you were thinking, what were you thinking? How did you feel about the option? Like, what was going through your mind at that time?
I think ultimately I didn't. It's hard to find how to put it, but I didn't want everything to change, and I wanted to had to an extent, because being a long-standing associate, had a leadership role of a kind. So I sort of saw it as a continuity in a way, and I love working at this practice, and all our staff are great, and I just wanted to hold everything together really, and that's what we did. I wouldn't have been able to do it without all the staff behind me as well, and they were amazing.
Yeah, perfect. So you kind of, it sounds to me like you stepped in like a hero.
I wouldn't call it that. I wouldn't call it that. He just sort of, I think all of us here did what we had to do at the time to keep things going for the patients. Really, that's in the end, that's what the practice is about, isn't it? It's the patients.
Yeah. So you sort of took the best of a bad situation, sort of pulled together, kind of made it work for everyone. And then, so you find yourself not only owning one dental practice, but two.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the previous practice owner, Will, he owned two practices, but under the same limited company. So when I bought out the limited company, it came with two practices.
What's the saying? You wait for a bus, and then two for ages, and then two come at once.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That's exactly that.
So you went from 0 to 2 in a very quick time frame.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, within the space of a month of you having that conversation, sadly he passed away.
Yeah.
Like, practices don't sell within a month. Like
No.
I understand the process was still open, like it was still ongoing.
Yeah. So the process had started at the time, but in the end, it took a year for everything to go through, because it was very difficult. Obviously, then it's difficult for his wife straight after the event then to, because she's going to be grieving, to try and negotiate a practice sale at the same time that she's lost her husband. So largely, she asked one of their best friends, who's also a solicitor, to help with the practice sale. But I think, whilst everything was fine in that respect, I think all the what was going on in the background with the estate and that kind of thing then meant that took a bit of a protracted time. I mean, I think largely practice sales do take a number of months, but they don't always take a year.
Yeah, probably not. I guess, like you say, it's not like the wife can just jump in and kind of act straight away. Like they've got to figure out, take, inherit everything and sort, like you say, sort the estate out, and then they can kind of come to you and sort of finalize the sale. So yeah, so bit of a baptism of fire there, wasn't it, in terms of like the business world and dealings and stuff like that. So when did you like finally take over the practice, and did you, prior to owning the practice, did you sort of step in and like obviously like lead the team like through that year?
Yeah. So after he passed away at the end of January 2016, we had that full year really, till I completed on the 1st of February 17. So it was pretty much almost to the day a full year. And in that time, I was effectively the clinical lead. I was the clinical lead without being the owner at that point. So I had to act like the principal, but I didn't have all the paperwork. But in the clinical environment, so I suppose I was effectively the principal at that point.
Yeah, perfect. Great. So obviously you kind of get a bit of experience of running the practice, and then obviously then everything goes through, you take ownership of the practice, and then you're like, what do I do now? Like, what were you thinking at that point? Like, what was going through your mind? Like, you probably took out some money to buy the practice, all this sort of thing. You've got these responsibilities now. Like, what was going through your mind during those first few months?
Just finding out exactly what you have to do to run a practice. It sounds crazy, but it's something that you never get taught. And any of my colleagues who bought practices will probably tell you the same thing, unless they've got a parent or something who's owned a practice before, who'll be able to tutor them. Anybody who's not got dentists in the family, especially, will tell you it's just a massive learning curve. And I did get some idea from Will's wife about what she used to do or didn't do. But it's then working out how you do things yourself. So to begin with, I was doing everything, even down to the point where I was counting through our cash takings and taking them to the bank myself. um,
Literally everything.
Literally everything. Yeah.
Did you steer clear of the toilets, or were you doing that as well?
No, we do. We do have employed cleaners, so I didn't have to do that.
You weren't scrubbing.
No. But all the business administration side of it, I was doing myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So so prior to that, had like, you know, the previous owner and his wife, had they covered those duties?
Yeah. So they cover them between them. So I think he used to do some of it, and she used to do some of it. Although he did admit to me and to the other staff he quite often used to be up until past midnight doing admin for the practice.
Which is the, you know, that's the and that's probably the truth of most practices, isn't it? Like, I think, you know, and I think in most businesses in general, like the staff see you, you know, 9 till 5 in the practice, but they don't see all the hours you put in, like beyond that. So like this, you know, staying up till midnight, you know, making sure that, you know, you're balancing your books and stuff. They don't see that, and yet they think that you have the easy way.
No, I would say, in looking back in retrospect, being an associate was easy. I mean, associates listening won't, possibly a lot of them won't think that, but having held both roles, I can say that in comparison, it's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, to go from, like, you know, just doing your clinical stuff. Obviously, there's a lot involved with like following up patients and so on. Yeah, when you add on, you know, like actually treating patients, managing a team, like the finance, marketing, as you would have stepped into. Yeah, it's a different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So obviously, you don't. When we spoke before, you don't do all these. You don't do everything now. You know, you slowly kind of brought people on, or past responsibilities. How did you go about that? Like, what were the first few things you got off your plate, and how did you handle that kind of like handover?
Well, you know, probably like I spoke about before, the sorting out the cash and you know, tabulating that, taking that to the bank. I definitely got that off my plate, but also there's a lot of work, and anybody listening is a practice owner will know. There's a lot of work with policies and procedures, making sure they're up to date, because when we're inspected we're in Wales, so we have Healthcare Inspectorate Wales inspect us, but you know, anybody who's in England will have CQC, and then in Scotland they got a different body again. But they love a good policy and procedure. It doesn't matter what part of the UK you're in, and you've got to get that spot on and make sure it's being implemented. Make sure all the staff are on the same page with it, or they know what the policy is, etc., etc. So a lot of that kind of stuff. Emma is my practice manager. She took that on then. Yeah, once I got around to delegating it, which wasn't immediately, so I had to get to know everything myself first to know what to delegate.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so yeah, you can't just like hand it off to someone and hope that they figure it out. Sometimes it makes sense to, do your time doing it, and then you can always figure out the right person, or, you know, whatever it is. No, that's good. That sounds like a great approach. Let's talk about what you've done to the practice since then. So, you know, where, in terms of like surgeries and, you know, number of dentists, what did it look like, you know, as you took over, and kind of where are you now?
I don't think we've increased the number of dentists, but I think the dentists we've got have, I'd say, overall do more clinical time.
Mhm.
We did have the one practice open 5 days a week, and the other one was open 3 days a week. And I'd say really that was the case pretty much up until COVID. And I think, like a lot of people, COVID in a lot of ways made people reevaluate everything. And I guess you have some time to, you know, amongst sitting down and panicking that you're going to go bust. There was the flip side, where you could have more time to plan things out. And when that's when we decided, well, there's no point having a practice where you've got it shut 2 days a week. It might as well be seeing patients. So we're 5 days a week
Perfect.
at both now.
Fantastic. So you went from like a collective 8 days a week to 10 days a week.
10, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Perfect. So even that, yeah, like that opens up a lot of opportunities for growth, doesn't it? And just like, and it's a simple thing. Like you're not doing anything crazy. It's just, yeah, let's open up. Let's make sure we're open, all days of the week. That's great. And then what's next for you guys? Like what's the trajectory? You know, what are you planning for the future?
We're quite full at the moment, so we're just sort of trying to find various ways of expanding, really. I think there's probably other practices in that position. But one practice has got a spare room that's only really used for changing at the moment. Upstairs, quite a large room now. So that's a possibility. We could put a surgery in there at some point. And then I guess just doing more of what we're doing. So one of my associates is an Invisalign provider. So it's trying to get her more patients to. She likes doing that. So Invisalign bonding, that kind of thing. I'm a educational supervisor, so I've got a foundation dentist. So I think I'd like to do more kind of teaching and stuff in the future as well. So it's kind of a bit of sort of personal and business expansion, I think, going on both ways.
Fantastic. No, good, brilliant, man. And then let's just let's put your like thinking cap on. Not that you probably had it off anyway, but let's just think about as your time as a practice owner, what have been some of the biggest lessons from your time there? Like what are the things that stand out to you as like the big learning moments or the big aha moments?
Learning to delegate, which I'm still in the process of, I must say. There's still probably other things that I can still delegate, but I think when you first start off, you think, "Oh, I'm doing this, and only I can do it, and only I do it properly." And it's not always the case. Sometimes it's that if you delegate it to someone, there's two things about it. One, they could well do it better than you and do it differently. But even if they don't do it better than you and do it differently, as a general rule of thumb, if they do it at least 70% of how you do it, that's good going forward because they can build from there anyway. So yeah, basically try not to be a control freak. In the early days, either do bits and bobs if you're in the same position as me and there was no practice manager. Try and do a bit yourself just so you know how it works. But then as soon as you think, right, I know how this system works, get rid of it to someone else. So, because you can't. Again, this is another analogy, I know, but captains don't row the ship, if you like. If you're using an old Viking longboat as an analogy, the captain didn't used to row the boat. So that's you have to be there to be the strategic leadership. You need to be thinking outside the box and that kind of thing, which you can't if you're doing everything at the same time.
Honestly, the way you've described delegation, couldn't have put it better myself. Like that idea of you don't want to give it up. Most people want to keep control of the way something's done. But the way you summarized it, as long as they're doing it 70% the way you would do, like they can get better. And let's be honest, most people, give them the time to learn and appreciate the job or the role, they'll be 10 times better than you. Like, because you don't have the time to do it.
No.
But I think a lot of people can learn from just that statement alone.
Yeah.
The idea of give up control. It's not going to be, and I think that's the thing you have to remember is, it's not going to be like the same as good as you did straight away. But after amount of time, it'll be better than what you can do. So I think that's just the thing. Just kind of hang tight, deal with the kind of maybe slightly less standard for a fraction of time, and then after that, I'll be better than you anyway. So yeah, honestly, Adam, gold.
Yeah, I mean, I think things you delegate to other staff because not tend to have so much on their plate. They got more time to learn to do things better than you can do them anyway. So lots of things that I've delegated to Emma now. She's way better at it than I am. So,
Yeah.
But everyone has a learning curve to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, is there anything else that you wish you'd known before? Is there anything you wish you'd known before taking over?
I mean, it's difficult to apply it to my my exact circumstances, but I think if I hadn't been taking over in those circumstances, if I was buying a practice, and like a lot of people out there who want to buy a practice now, just looking at all practices in general, based on my experience of having to end up being head cook and bottle washer at the beginning, I'd definitely be doing due diligence and say, who does your policies, who does, who takes your cash to the bank, who, how much is delegated already? Because I mean, it may be that the principal does a lot at that practice, but at least you know that then. And if you want to buy the practice, you walk into it with eyes wide open instead of not knowing, and then all of a sudden having a bit of a shock when you first take over.
Yeah, because I imagine at the time, like you said, you probably thought you were super busy before, and then suddenly all these extra responsibilities get lumped on your lap, and you're like, oh, that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Fantastic. So you might have already covered this, because I feel that there is that kind of theme of delegation in our conversation today. But thinking about your experience of being a practice owner, your prior experience of being an associate in a practice, what would be your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice? What would that core one thing be? Obviously, it could be more than one thing, but it might be delegation.
Well, delegation is a big thing. I'd say know your why as well. So why are you doing it? Why are you buying a practice? What's your reasoning behind it? Is it because you want to be a leader? Is it just because you want to make money? But know your why, and then also try and work out what your brand is going to be. Because to be honest, these days, a lot of it's about branding, not in the selling sense, but just being able to know the direction your practice is going in. So you don't want to be aimless. You want to be able to say to everyone, this is where we want to go. This is our this is our end goal to an extent. Excuse me, that's frog in my throat now. This is our end goal. This is where we want to be. You can always change that if you get to your end goal. Choose another end goal. But this is where we're aiming for. I think it was it Stephen Covey said in his book, start with the end in mind. So yeah, you want to know where you're going.
Yes, yeah, I think
people.
Yeah, that whole you don't. How can you get where you want to go if you don't know where you're going? Which I think is very solid advice. No, man, that's good. Honestly, there are some great nuggets in this episode. So I'll definitely try and make sure I pull them out and share them as sound bites. But no, before we kind of wrap things up, Adam, if anyone is interested in maybe reaching out to you, maybe asking you a question or two, is that okay? And if so, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. The best way to reach me is on my business email, which is adam@teethforlife.org.
Perfect. So that's adam@teethforlife.org. I'll make sure that I include that in the show notes. And finally, Adam, all I can say is thank you so much for your time today. Has been excellent getting you on the podcast. obviously great just getting to know you over the last couple of weeks in the prep and stuff. But honestly, what you've shared, and again, we're trying to share these stories about how people get into practice ownership and their stories of owning a practice. And let's be honest, yours is probably one of the most unique, sad circumstances, and obviously that's it kind of out of your control, but super unique. You got through it though, stronger than ever. And I'm guessing you wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, not at all. Not at all. I would say that I've said it before during the podcast, I know, but getting through it wasn't just me; it was everyone here. Everyone here. The whole. I'm lucky to have a whole amazing team. So it was them, not me, really, that got us all through it.
Fantastic, man. Perfect. Anyway, dude, again, thank you so much. Obviously, we'll keep in touch. But yeah, I'll see you very soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Cheers.